My name is Cole Turner, and I had been pretty convinced that everything in life was going great until lately I am in my early 40s and things had been all right. There were no major issues in my marriage, nor was there anything out of the ordinary concerning my personal life earlier this year. However, things started to change, even though I had never considered myself to be a weak man. Notice my wife Anna began to take more control within our relationship. It made me question the scales between us in a lot of ways. It was my own doing. I had often taken the easy road, giving in when we disagreed, especially on things I considered minor, but those disagreements started happening more frequently, and I realized I needed to stand my ground before it became a regular pattern. My wife of 39 years, the undeniably beautiful Anna, most definitely had an entirely straightforward method for getting her way. When things were going her way, she rewarded me with sex and great meals whenever I'd object or resist. Both those pleasures were very obviously withheld most of the time. I didn't bother to push back because I was just too busy. I was an engineer at the local branch of a big construction company. The workdays were long, not the least during summer. When we did the biggest projects, I used to spend my evenings at the golf club, which Anna was not particularly happy about this past year, though I had spent more and more time at the stable where our 13-year-old daughter Elila had her horse. She was deathly afraid of horses, and so I had to help Lee with it, a present from Mom and Dad. Naturally, I hated every minute of it. At the beginning, it was all to take an optimistic turn. When I met Alice, she is an attractive and easygoing woman whose daughter also has a horse in the stable. Alice soon realized just how ignorant I was when it came to horses, and took it upon herself to teach me a thing or two. I did the heavy work for her, as her husband conveniently claimed to be allergic to horses and never appeared. Alice and I spent a lot of time together, but there was nothing beyond friendship. For now anyway. If I say that I didn't feel anything, it would be a lie. Once she said as a joke, if we were single, I could seduce you in seconds. She must have noticed my reaction, because she then added that she was frustrated with her husband. She then asked, "Are you as nice at home as you seem to be here?" I teased her with the response that she could find that out if we were both to remain single, and she playfully promised to take me up on that offer. On the surface, Anna and I had what many people would describe as a great life. We earned good money, lived in a nice area with friends and our social circle admired Anna. She was just perfect when we had guests over. People envied me, thinking I had it all. Anna and I met for the first time during a holiday trip to Mallorca. We had come with friends, and our groups fell into the same queue at the airport. For days thereafter, we kept running into each other at party spots on the island. I asked for her phone number, asked her out for a dinner, and what followed was a steaming encounter under a palm tree in a park. That was the beginning of our relationship, and when we got back home, it blossomed. Anna was passionate, and for the most part, a physical contact was fierce and pleasing. The less welcoming ones were her friends, who had their own holiday romances in Mallorca, whereas they had no problem with vacation romances. They did not like me as Anna's long-term boyfriend in Spain, and as friends didn't hesitate to get hooked up with my buddies. Most of them came from rather modest backgrounds. A few of them even hired the local men for just a little bit of extra fun, but the minute we returned, they made sure to be crystal clear that whatever was happening on some Mediterranean island was staying on that island. Many of these women actually considered me too inferior for Anna, because I came from a far lesser background. I had grown up in that part of the city that had a bad reputation, though it wasn't nearly as rough. When I lived there, my job and present lifestyle meant nothing to them. Fortunately, Anna never took her snobbish upper-class friend's side on this issue. Although she might be considered a trophy wife in some circles, I never thought of her that way. For me, she was just a great girl who happened to have parents that were a bit wealthier than mine. A few months into our relationship, Anna developed some problems with her birth control pills. Her doctor advised her to stay off them for a while, and with our frequent passion moments, not every time having condoms present, the inevitable occurred. She became pregnant. We decided not to waste too much time and get married, and both of us wanted to get it over with before the birth of the child. Anna's Parents had no objections being an only child. They gave her as a wedding present a beautiful summer house beside her, picturesque lake near our hometown since she would inherit it in any case. It was an astute move on their part by passing on the responsibility for maintenance to me, of course. They continued to use the house as much as they wanted, even though Anna owned it. In exchange, I retained our townhouse, which I had previously purchased prior to our marriage in my name solely. We shared everything else, and at no time was it ever referred to as my house or your house. Anna's parents had been good people. They ran a successful furniture business, which they sold for a decent price, and upon her father's 60th birthday bought a nice house in Marbella, Spain. I liked going there to visit them. But Anna herself hated the hot weather, and that had me curious about how things would go when she ultimately inherited that place. Anna worked for a district office of one of the biggest insurance companies, and she had just been promoted to some type of vice department head of special projects. I felt this new position was affecting our marriage. She wasn't the same, and every time I inquired from her if everything was right, she dismissed it and said she was just tired from learning the ropes at her new job. She said things would get better once she got the hang of it. Still, I would catch the changes. Our sex life started to suffer. Also, no overt affair indicators, no new overtime, no garish new clothes, no mysterious calls. There was only one clue: how angry she got when following a particularly unfulfilling Saturday night in bed. I playfully mentioned her having an affair, and it didn't bring much work rated issues to the home. What the last 2 weeks had seen her boast about this huge contract she was handling. She said she was telling me all that because she trusted me implicitly. Actually, she never gave any concrete details about the deal. I had a fair idea more or less about what it involved given happenings locally, but I didn't press her for it. It all came crashing down one fateful Tuesday evening. Anna came home from work with this look in her face, and I knew right then and there that something was wrong. What's going on? Did you get fired? I asked. Of course not, quite the opposite. Actually, we've nearly closed a huge deal, she said. But still, something bothered her. She didn't seem happy or ready to celebrate. Don't try to fool me. I can see something's on your mind. I pressed. Well, you're sort of right. There's another important project tied to the first one, she said. Okay, that's normal. So what's the problem? The second project requires some travel, overnight stays now and then. The first trip is this Friday, if you don't mind, she added cautiously. A weird feeling began overcoming me. The overly cautious explanation of the successful deal sounded to me just like the attempt to conceal something far more ominous, just like the mentioning of this Friday night trip did something which no sane person in the world wouldn't find suspicious. She was clearly not in the best mood to tell me this, so I was even more curious. I asked, where precisely are you going? She named some small seashore town a bit less than 45 kilometers away, connected by a good, well-maintained road. I almost fell off my chair with the absurdity of staying overnight in such proximity. I started to suspect that she was up to something no good. I still played along, acting like I didn't have a single CL blue year staying overnight. When it's only a half-hour drive back home, I asked. Our client's manager can't get there before 5, and it's going to take a while to tour the property before we actually close the deal. After that, I'm supposed to host a victory dinner at the seaside in a tradition for our company, she explained. That all sounds pretty routine, I said, though I could already see where this was headed. Testing the waters, I asked out of curiosity, what kind of property are you inspecting? After all, your expertise is in economics, not real estate. It's a leisure area with 45 holiday chalet, she replied. Just as I had suspected, I knew exactly who was involved: Ryan, West Ryan, and I went way back, having grown up in the same rough part of town. He was now a well-acknowledged figure in the local real estate scene, though for all the wrong reasons. Ryan had started as a car salesman and ended up marrying into a rich family, his wife being the daughter of a local slumlord. They had an open marriage of the most peculiar breed. She had a secret girlfriend, and Ryan was boasting of having slept with several married women at his posh chalet in very leisure area, and I was referring to in Ryan. However, this trait translated to a ruthless streak that became tailor-made for the darker side of family business. He had recently purchased a massive complex of about 500 Rundown apartments the community had been desperate to unload. The place was notorious, and the local authorities wanted nothing more than to wash their hands of it for now. I kept my suspicions to myself and asked, it sounds like a weird job. Does this dinner really take all night? How many people from your office are going? Just me this time. Plus, there'll be wine at dinner. Do you really want me to drive home drunk? She asked, as if speaking reasonably. Just you? I queried, raising an eyebrow. Are you sure you're qualified to inspect 45 chalet, especially as they could be in all states of disrepair? I could tag along, no cost to you at all, then drive you home after dinner. It's not a full survey, just a preliminary inspection for information gathering, she returned hastily before silencing me. Thanks anyway. I don't want you involved in my work, and you have never heard of taxis. They still exist, you know. It would probably be cheaper for your company than booking a hotel by the coast, I said, as I watched her squirm while knowing she was cornered. I'll be staying in a guest house in the leisure area, and I'll get paid for my overtime plus a subsistence allowance. So who exactly is asking you to stay there this Friday night? The boss, the client, or did you offer? I pressed on. It's my boss, of course, she said, but this time there wasn't that edge in her voice. She hesitated for a moment before replying. My boss intended to handle it himself, but he's tied up with other matters, so he suggested I represent the company for this crucial deal. It's a big opportunity for me, and there's no reason for you to interfere with my work. At that point, I'd had enough. I exploded, shouting, a great opportunity, more like a chance to get screwed by that pervert Ryan West, starring in his sleazy sex tapes for nothing more than a subsistence allowance. Is sleeping with him part of your promotion? You do realize that Ryan's chalet is wired with hidden cameras, don't you? And I was stunned into silence by my outburst. I pressed on. Ryan shows of his new sex tapes to his buddies at the golf club, and I bet the one with you would be a hit. Ryan and I both belong to the same golf club, and I'd heard more than enough about his activities. He had once bragged about hidden cameras in the guest apartment attached to his chalet, where he likely planned to take Anna. Under the pretense of business talks, the man had shown me pictures of himself with the wife of a local painting contractor. After sealing a deal for a maintenance job, he even offered to share her with me if I became interested in doing business with him. I told him to go to hell. Ryan boasted that once a woman and saw the photos, she often agreed to more, believing he'd keep them private if she played along. While some women were coerced into it, plenty went willingly. Drawn to Ryan's notoriety and charm, I was shocked that he had tried his tricks on Anna, but I suspected it was personal revenge. My company had refused to get involved in his shady, unapproved deals, and Ryan had made snide comments about paying me back with interest the last time we crossed paths at the club. His dirty tricks were common knowledge in our circle, and Anna's boss should have been aware of his reputation. The fact that her boss had somehow persuaded my usually prudish wife to spend a night at Ryan's chalet made my blood boil. Anna wasn't naive. She had to understand what a night with Ryan meant now. She sat at the table crying. It's not what you think. It's not like that, she said between sobs. Oh, it's worse, far worse, I replied, but make no mistake, if you sleep with that scumbag Ryan, you can consider our marriage over. Do you understand? She didn't answer, so I raised my voice. Do you understand that if you go through with this, our marriage is done? She nodded, still sobbing. Without another word, I picked up the phone book and found Ryan's mother's number. I introduced myself as an old friend and asked for Ryan's private number. She gave it to me without hesitation. I dialed, and his wife Lucy answered. I politely introduced myself as a construction engineer and asked if Ryan was home. She informed me he was at the golf club. Hanging up, I told Anna, still crying, that I had some business to attend to, and walked out the door. She was clearly in shock. This wasn't the usual soft, accommodating side of me she was used to seeing, but I was done. I felt like the last straw had finally broken the camel's back. As I reached the car, Anna came to the doorway and shouted after me, don't do anything stupid. If you harass Mr. West, I'll file for divorce. I didn't respond. I drove straight to the golf club, where I quickly found out that Ryan was playing around with two others and was likely somewhere around the 14th or 15th hole. I started walking in that direction. Sure enough, they were at the green of the 15th. The moment Ryan saw me coming, he knew what was about to happen. He threw his club down and ran it
Took me nearly 100 meters to catch up, but when I did I tackled him to the ground.
There was no talking, no reasoning. I unleashed everything on him. Determined to beat the crap out of him, Ryan had.
Ruined my marriage, and he needed to pay the price.
I knew I didn't have much time before one of his friends or another golfer would intervene and put a stop to it.
But I made every second count with a few good punches in his face. He went down to the ground with the remaining seconds. I managed to kick him in the groin, a kick he would not forget.
I stopped only when his friends and several other players
ran to his aid as I walked back toward the clubhouse. I warned them not to interfere. By the time I got there, a police car was
already waiting. A couple of young officers came along politely and asked me if I wanted to do things the easy way. I agreed and
got into the back seat without fuss. It was a quiet ride to the station. There I
was led into a small office where another officer began asking questions. I clung to the story I had constructed in
my head, how Ryan, who had known me since childhood,
and who, just like all the other kids, envied my good-look wife, tried to entangle her into some shady business. How Ryan lured me onto the golf course and attempted to attack me, and
how I had just saved myself. The officer did not seem to have bought my story. He
still wrote it down, though I signed the statement,
and then sat in a holding cell while they called the prosecutor. After
being at the station for 5 hours, I was released and
escorted back to the golf club by a patrol officer. I thought I had
a pretty good chance of not going to trial. Cases like these often died in bureaucrat red tape, and 2 years later it would be declared null and void. When I returned home, I was still there in the kitchen. Where have you been?
The police station. The police station. For what? Not much, just answering a few questions about what happened to your friend Ryan at the golf club. Her face went pale. Oh my God, what did you do to
Ryan West? I shrugged. Not my fault. He's so fragile. He attacked me, and now he's
in the hospital. Of course, that wasn't the truth, but I needed to keep my version consistent, just in case the
police did follow up with her or her SEAL workers. And Anna began sobbing again, and quietly said, I'm sleeping in the
spare room tonight. I heard the click of the lock from inside. Things had been a lot happier between us in the past, but
those days felt distant now. The next morning, Anna got up early, and the only thing she was saying before she left for
work was, we need to have a serious talk tonight. I agreed. I called immediately a
lawyer at work who handled some of the company's legal affairs. He
enjoyed a reputation for being tough and efficient.
We had become friends over the years. He promised to help me take action against Anna's employer. 30 minutes later, he
called back to say that he had arranged a meeting with the district chief at Anna's office that afternoon sharp at
2 o'clock. We were ushered into the district chief's office,
where Anna's boss was already waiting. The executives of the insurance company seemed to have much respect for my lawyer, since they agreed to listen to whatever he had to say. Anna's boss looked visibly nervous when my lawyer laid out
our case. He accused the boss of knowingly sending Anna to
Ryan West for what was essentially a pointless survey,
followed by dinner and an overnight stay at the chalet. Although the boss denied any suggestion of sexual expectations, my lawyer
didn't let him off the hook, pointing out that anyone
with common sense could have foreseen what Ryan had in mind. My boss started to sweat when my lawyer made it sound like he acted as a pimp and threatened him
with the legal consequences for such an action. Finally, the outcome of this was
that they nullified the contract with Ryan West and agreed to take responsibility for all my legal fees. I
wasn't sure if taking the matter to court
would have achieved anything beyond racking up legal expenses for myself, but the district chief of the insurance company knew that the bad press would cost them far more than the settlement we agreed on. I could tell the district chief understood I'd done him a favor by forcing them to cancel Ryan's contract. It was clear that Anna's team had bungled the negotiations with Ryan, a master manipulator. The chief knew the head office was blaming him for the mess, which had caused significant losses in their accounts. Anna's incompetent boss, an old friend of the district chief, had been hired without going through the usual vetting process. No sensible department head would have allowed Anna, in her first major case, to handle someone as notorious as Ryan West. It was obvious both the district chief and her boss were swayed more by her charm than her actual qualifications. If they had expected any personal favors from Anna in exchange for her promotion, I figured they would back off for a while after
hearing about my confrontation with Ryan after the meeting.
I called a contact at an insurance company we often worked with. I informed him that Ryan West's bargain insurance on his slum properties had been cancelled and would soon be available on the market again. He promised me a nice bonus if his company secured the deal when Anna returned home. That evening, she was livid. A teased tiger would have seemed
like a house pet compared to her. To be honest, I didn't. Something about heading to her summer house and stormed outside. Our daughter
looked unsettled by her mother's outburst.
But since Anna didn't ask her to come along, she stayed with me without any protest. We went to the stable later that evening, where I ran into Alice. She had a noticeable black eye, and when I asked what happened,
she revealed her husband had hit her during an argument
over his online poker debts. When I told her Anna had moved out because I
stopped her from spending a night with a client, Alice gave me a bear hug which quickly turned into our first kiss.
As she held me, she whispered, "Don't you think we'd
have fewer problems if you and I were together instead of with our spouses?" I simply replied yes and kissed her again.
This time, much more passionately. We both felt a weight lift after that moment, realizing we had a potential path forward if our marriages didn't survive. When we returned from the stable, I headed to my office and checked the security system at Anna's summer house. I had installed the system a few years back, which included sensors on doors and windows as well as motion detectors inside. It was connected to the phone line, and as expected, Anna had disabled
it upon her arrival. However, I had also set up some new outdoor equipment as part of a test for my job. It included a digital camera hidden in a fake bird's nest, triggered by motion 50 meters away. The camera would snap pictures and send them directly to my phone. Since this was a work-related test, Anna never asked how it operated, and I didn't feel the need to explain it to her.
On Wednesday and Thursday, I didn't bother checking the camera, knowing Anna's car was the only one there. But on Friday evening, after running a few errands and shopping for
dinner with ILA, I received an alert on my phone. It was just after 6:30 when the notification came through. I opened the
camera feed and saw a silver Lexus SUV parked next to Anna's car. The only Lexus of that kind I had ever seen in town belonged to Ryan West. I knew then that the situation was about to take a serious turn. At 13, there was nothing unusual about Lila being left
to her own devices for an hour or two, especially on
a balmy summer evening. She accepted without demur
that I must go out for some time, and as the roads were clear, I covered the distance to the summer house in less than half an hour. I drove in unseen and then stole quietly up to the
house. I opened the front door with my key. The living room was empty, but I could hear muffled voices in the master bedroom. Anna was screaming, and as I drew closer, I could hear her yell, "No, I never agreed to that." Then in response, a male voice, precisely Ryan's, yelled, "Shut up.
Rob promised me good sex, and I'll show you exactly what
that means." Anna's voice was defiant. "You're not getting a BJ from
me. You've already had your extra." Ryan sounded furious, definitely not taking
kindly to his demands being challenged. A BDJ is an extra. When I say good sex, I
mean all of it, and I want it now. The next sound was a loud slap followed by
Anna's scream. That was enough for me. I turned my phone onto record and moved closer. I stepped right out of the
bedroom into view and clicked the button, which clicked 9 continuous shots in fast succession. I just happened upon the
right time to catch this scene. Ryan, with a black eye and
bruised face from our scuffle of the night before, laying on top of Anna, holding her down on her stomach. Neither one of them had noticed me until the flash went of both lay
naked on the bed. Before Ryan could realize what was going down, I had pocketed the phone and thrown a hard
punch to his chin. I didn't stop there. My fury took over, and I hit him again and again until he was too weak to defend himself. When he finally stopped resisting, I grabbed his legs and dragged him outside to his car. I dropped him in front of the car, making sure the license plate was in full view. Pulled my phone out of again. This time, I started to video unzipped pants and humiliated him by urinating on him. Ryan just lay there, didn't even flinch while I drenched him,
including his face. As I finished, I leaned over and
told him that if he had the guts to tell anyone he'd slept with
my wife, that video would see the light of day and hit the internet for all to see. Get your sorry as of this property.
Or I'll wreck your car, I warned him when he would not hurry up.
I took a big stone and threw it into his windshield. It broke the glass and that got him moving fortunately for him. He had left the keys in the car and whizzed off before I
could do any more damage. I knew I was acting like a man possessed.
But something about Ryan hitting and beating
Anna snapped my rage into a boil. She might have chosen to cheat on me, but his
having done this didn't make it right. I felt like I had done what
anyone would have wanted to do in this instance. What
Ryan had coming to him now. It was up to him to keep quiet. If he did, no one would ever know what I'd done. When I came back inside, Anna was showering. She'd locked the door of the bedroom at a glance. Didn't
look like there had been much of a struggle. Their clothes
were laid folded on chairs on either side of the bed. I took a few more photos in case Anna tried to say
she had been attacked from the very start. Then I gathered up Ryan's stuff and shoved it in a trash bag before I left. I
wrote a short note to Anna. Dear Anna, I promised to divorce you. If you slept with that pervert Ryan, now you have what you wanted. Call. I figured Anna intended to stay in the shower
until I left, so I grabbed the bag of Ryan's belongings and made my way out. My first stop was Ryan's house. The garage door was open, but there was no sign of his car. I took the sack,
walked up to the front door and rang the bell. When his
wife Lucy answered, I handed her the sack and told her how I had found Ryan's belongings in the master bedroom of my summer house. Then I added a bit of a fabricated story about how poor Ryan had run out in a hurry, leaving his
things behind and tripping on the doorstep, probably hurting himself in the process. To my surprise, Lucy smiled and thanked me for taking care of his belongings. I didn't expect that reaction back home. I sat down with Ila and
explained that her mom and I were going through some issues
and might be living in different places for a while. I assured her she could see either of us as much as she wanted. She took it well, saying it was okay because many of her
friends had parents who lived separately and it didn't seem
to cause them any problems. On Saturday at the stable, I told Alice that I was now thinking about being single, although it would be 6 months before it was official. I also filled her in on what I'd found at Anna's summer house. I didn't
push her to leave her husband. That decision had to come
from her. When I got home, Anna was sitting at the kitchen table,
looking like a complete mess. It was clear she wanted to talk. I told her that there was no need for explanations. I had heard and seen enough. The recordings and pictures I had were more than enough proof of her infidelity. Anna didn't try to plead for forgiveness, realizing it wasn't the time for that. Instead, we discussed the immediate practicalities, Leela finances,
and some other arrangements. We agreed to meet in a week
to finalize a plan. At our next meeting, it turned out we had only
minor differences on most matters, and after less than 2 hours,
we signed the divorce papers. Once Anna had left, I felt
an odd sense of relief, but also surprise at how smoothly everything had gone. It
felt like Anna was just as eager to get rid of me
as I was of her. She didn't put up a fight regarding shared custody of
Ila, who stayed primarily at my house and spent time with Anna as she wished. It
took me a while to figure out why Anna had allowed herself to be
with Ryan in the first place. Then one day I got another clue from the hidden camera outside her summer house.
It started showing her boss as a frequent visitor,
staying overnight. That revelation led me to call
the district chief at Anna's company. I asked for his opinion on a section boss sleeping with an employee and apparently encouraging her
to seduce one of their clients. To my surprise, the
DC brushed it off, saying he had already done enough
regarding the situation with Ryan West and wasn't interested in what
his employees did in their free time. Frustrated,
I decided to handle things myself. 3 days later, I showed up at
Anna's boss's office, accusing him of sleeping with her
before our divorce and sending her to Ryan. The arrogant creep
laughed and asked, so what can you do about it? I showed him exactly what I could do.
After a few hard kicks to his groin, I doubt he'll be
able to sleep with anyone for a while before leaving. I warned him that if he went to the police, I'd ensure the whole sordid scandal made it to the tabloids. The only follow-up to that visit
was an angry phone call from Anna barking at me like a mad woman. I kept my responses brief with polite "yes dear" replies, which only seemed to infuriate her more. At the stable, I found myself
uncertain about how to approach things with Alice. I wanted her to leave her husband and move in with me, but I knew
That decision had to come from her when she asked if I had been dating yet. I told her the truth that I hadn't then.
She asked what would you say if I left my husband. Without hesitation, I replied, I'd say the best possible solution would be with you. She paused and asked, can I trust you? Yes, I said. Nothing more was
said about Alice's situation for the rest of that week, until one day she called me at work. She told me that the local gambling shop owner had contacted her about her husband's debts. When she confronted him at his job, things
escalated into a terrible argument, ending with him
threatening to beat the crap out of her when he got home. Now she didn't feel safe going back. I took a sturdy carpenter
from one of our job sites with me and met Alice outside her
house. We managed to get her to children and everything she needed without any trouble. Back at my place, I let her and
the kids take the master bedroom so they could be together. That first night, knowing how hard it must have been for
all of them, Alice and I didn't get intimate
until after she had decided to divorce her husband and the papers were
signed. He intended to fight it, but his efforts seemed more like a hollow gesture than anything substantial in the meantime. We reorganized the house so both of her kids had their own rooms. Lila and Maya, who already knew each other from the riding club, acted like sisters almost immediately. Alice's son, Henry,
and I became friends quickly, and I even took on the role of his soccer dad when Alice and I finally made love. It was an unforgettable experience. Gentle, passionate, and deeply satisfying. She was far more involved in our love making than Anna had ever been, encouraging me to do things I hadn't done in 20 years. Alice was so overwhelmed with happiness that she cried. She later confessed
that her husband had barely shown any interest in
her for years, only wanting the occasional quickie when he felt like it. Both of us admitted that we dreamed about that night long before it ever happened. It felt
like a relief that neither of us had destroyed our previous
marriages because of our feelings for each other. Instead, we found new love after our spouses had already ruined things. Nobody could blame us for that. Anna and I eventually had a long, serious
talk over coffee to sort out some matters concerning Lila. Even though I knew all I needed to know about her cheating, I didn't ask her any more questions
about her relationships with Ryan and Rob. To my surprise, Anna started
to confess. She said wrecking our marriage was the most foolish thing she had ever done, and she deeply regretted it. She missed me in our family life, but she knew she had lost me for good. Her confession was almost textbook. She described how it all started with harmless lunches with Rob at various
restaurants. Over time, they developed a close personal relationship,
but no physical intimacy, not until Rob told her she would be promoted to his deputy and had a shot at his job once he was promoted to district chief. They celebrated the news with lunch at a small hotel where Rob had booked a room. That's when they took the afternoon off,
and she gave in. Anna admitted that the guilt weighed heavily
on her when she returned home that night, but the
excitement of the promotion dealed her remorse. She insisted
she didn't love Rob and had no plans to leave me. She just
saw him as a good friend and mentor, so their weekly sex became part of the job.
For her, Rob's financial troubles after his divorce made him vulnerable when
Ryan offered a hefty kickback in exchange for a favorable insurance deal. Rob accepted, and by the time Ryan presented his final terms, including a night with Anna, Rob had
already spent the advance payment. Horrified, Anna refused, but Rob begged her to help, fearing Ryan would expose his corruption and demand the money back. After my lawyer and I got the insurance deal cancelled, Anna thought the issue was over, but Ryan still wanted what he had
paid for and demanded his night with her. Anna told me she had tried to reason with Rob, even offering to ask her
parents for a loan to repay Ryan, but Ryan wasn't
interested in money anymore. He wanted revenge on me. Rob, desperate, convinced Anna to go through with it, assuring her that Ryan had agreed to no perversions and promising that there
were no hidden cameras at the summer house. Despite her lingering doubts, Anna agreed, thinking she was saving both their jobs. She swore it was the worst mistake of her life and said she still had nightmares about that night. She also mentioned that Ryan hadn't contacted her since the brief phone call that night when he asked about his clothes. Anna gave me a strange look when I told her I had handled the situation with Ryan and that he wouldn't bother her again, but I didn't care
if Ryan turned his attention to Rob instead. Anna admitted that things quickly fell apart between her and Rob after I beat him.
She took care of him for a few days while he recovered, but instead of rekindling their affair, they constantly fought. Anna accused him of ruining her marriage while Rob countered by saying she cared more about her promotion than staying faithful. She regretted the affair deeply and told me that just 2 weeks after my confrontation with Rob,
the district chief at her office had a stroke. He was replaced by a
new chief from their main office who immediately launched
an investigation into Rob's shady deal with Ryan.
Eventually, Rob was given a choice: either be fired or
take a dead-end position in a small northern district. Rob chose the
latter. Rob swore to Anna that he never mentioned her involvement
in the Ryan deal to the new chief. Anna, for her part,
didn't miss him one bit when he left. She was promoted to his position, although after a company reorganization the role
wasn't quite as important as it had been when she first saw it.
While she had reached the highest position any woman had ever achieved at the district office, she confessed
that the price she paid was far too high. Her guilt weighed
heavily on her. She spent many lonely nights crying and worrying about her future at the company. To make matters
worse, course, she had begun having nightmares
about the new district chief, suspecting that he viewed her as available in some unsettling way. Anna revealed that her dream had been to get me back, but she had finally come to
terms with the fact that it was impossible. To her relief, she had gone on to dates with a nice man. If things
developed further, she planned to tell him the full truth and let him decide whether her past or their potential future mattered more. She also mentioned that if the new district chief ever made advances, she would rather cause a scandal and quit her job. I wished her the best of luck with her new life. 2 months after Alice and her children moved in with Laia and me, we were living happily as a family. The house was constantly filled with laughter and joy. Our Friday family fun nights became such a cherished tradition that none of the kids wanted to miss them, even on the weekends they could have spent with their other parents. I felt like a happy man once again, with a loving wife by my side. Thank you for watching. If you
enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, comment, and hit that subscribe button for more of Love Lust Lies.